Prepare.
To wait a bit too far, Dabu Daba Bilo Yaku. Oh, to wait a bit too far, Dabu Daba Bilo Yaku. To wait a bit too far, Dabu Daba Bilo Yaku. Dabu Daba Bilo Yaku. To wait a bit too far, Daba Daba Bilo Yaku, Emmanuel. To wait a bit too far, Daba Daba Bilo Yaku, Emmanuel. Daba Bilo Yaku. To wait a bit too far, Daba Daba Bilo Yaku, Emmanuel. To wait a bit too far, Daba Daba Bilo Yaku, Emmanuel.
Hey, thank you. Nice. Hey kids, what time is it?
It's time for Gesundheit Street.
It is time for Gesundheit Street. And the story tonight is entitled A Hasidische Kiss. Now, oftentimes we mention something like the Rebbe delivered a Hasidic discourse. But that term, a Hasidic discourse, does not carry the payload of what is actually happening when the Rebbe says a mind. And this story tonight will inform us a little bit of how powerful and how much love the Rebbe is putting in to saying the mind. It was a year after the passing of the previous Rebbe's father, the Rebbe Vershab's father, the Rebbe Murad. But it was before the Rebbe Rashab accepted the crown of leadership of the Chabad movement. The Rebbe Rashab was the next Rebbe after the Murad, but he didn't accept to be the Rebbe for about 15 years, 14 years, something like that. At that time, the Rebbe Rashab lived in a 2-room apartment. So that as he learned Torah with his friends, the Rashab's 4-year-old son, who would be the future previous Rebbe, slept nearby in a small bed. The Rebbe Rashab's learning partner glanced at the sleeping boy and he said, "A ray of light from pure thoughts is shining from the child's face." The Rebbe Rashab stood up to kiss his son, but he stopped. He never delivered the kiss. He thought for a moment. He recalled that besides offering sacrifices in the Holy Temple, the Jews also brought silver and gold to build and beautify the temple. With this in mind, the Rebbe Rashab resolved to exchange the physical kiss with a Hasidic discourse, a mind. And it would start with the words, "How great are your works, Hashem." When the previous Rebbe was 12 years old, remember the story started when he was 4 years old, a sleeping baby. When he was 12 years old, his father gave him the handwritten discourse, the Maimon. And he said, "This is a Hasidic kiss." And soon I will explain to you the meaning of what's written here in this kiss that I'm giving you. When the previous Rebbe turned 16, his father told him the whole story of that Hasidic kiss, which had taken place back when they were living in an apartment of 2 rooms. At that time, the Rebbe Rashab could have already been the Rebbe if he wanted to, if he would have just accepted the crown. Nevertheless, he was content to live in a 2-room apartment and serve Hashem happily and with the whole heart. Our Rebbe explained that a kiss connotes essential love. And in fact, no words can communicate the level of love expressed in a kiss. So too, when the Rebbe says a mimer for us, there's a level of love from the Rebbe, a level of a kiss that can't be expressed in words and letters. And this is especially the case since we're speaking of a kiss to a child who slept with a light of pure thought shining from his face. And how much more so a kiss from a Rebbe to a son who would have eventually filled his father's place and become the next Rebbe. From a different perspective, the love of a father for a child is not merely understood as an expression of nature, but it's also a principle in Torah. We cry to Hashem, have mercy on us like a father has mercy on his children. Furthermore, we call Hashem our merciful Father, or Father of mercy. A father and son are essentially one essence. Nevertheless, our Rebbe asks that in the light of the essential power of love expressed in a kiss, how can it be traded for a mimer? A mimer is an intellectual discourse. So how can you trade that for a kiss, which at first glance is merely an expression of intellect? However, since the Rebbe Rashab traded it for a kiss, we have to say that the mimer does represent a greater expression of love. That there's something higher in the mimer than even in the kiss. And this was the teaching the Rebbe Rashab taught the bar mitzvah boy. A kiss from a father to a son indicates an expression of essential love. But that love is dressed in the discourse. And which discourse? How great are your works, Hashem. And in that discourse is contained the actual essence of the Rebbe. That's what he's giving over in the mimer, something that's even higher than the kiss. It's known that Hashem wrote himself into the Torah. How did Hashem write himself into the Torah? When Hashem said, Anochi Havaya Elokecho, I am the Lord your God, when he gave us the 10 Commandments, you ask a question. The word Anochi indicates a level of Hashem that's completely separate from anything, separate from world, separate from people, separate from anything. And how does that separate higher level become dressed into the Lord your God? I am the Lord your God. How does that level that's completely separate become dressed? And he says the way it becomes dressed is through the Shem Havaya. Onochi Havaya Elokecha. I become your God. How? Using the tool of the Shem Havaya. How does that work? The Yud of the Shem Havaya is the drop of ink on the pen that Hashem uses to write himself in. And the Hey of the Shem Havaya is the 5 fingers. And the Vav of the Shem Havaya is the pen that Hashem uses. And the lower Hey of the Shem Havaya is the Shata, are the letters that are written on the parchment. And that's how Hashem becomes our God, through writing himself into the Torah through the Shem Havayah. It's known that Hashem wrote himself into the Torah, and that Tzaddik is similar to Hashem. And when the previous Rebbe became upset witnessing the last moments of his father's life, Rebbe Rashab told him, I'm going in heaven, but the writings I'm leaving here. In other words, my essence is staying here with you. When a father kisses a son, it's a wonderful outpouring of love. This is those of us who are poor in Das added this. When a father kisses a son, it's a wonderful outpouring of love. But the nachas the father gets when the son returns the kiss is incomparable. Those of us poor in Das believe in a similar way. The Rebbe receives great nachas whenever we learn a mimer that he has given us. If I had a guy with a drums who would go, now there's an addendum to this story. The Rebbe Rashab once said a mimer to his son, the future Rebbe, explaining that the world was created through 50 gates of Bina, the famous Nun Shari Bina. And after finishing the mimer, he added that there is an extension of Moses in every generation. Who's the Moses in every generation? Is the Rebbe. And the Moshe of the general Chassidus with its 50 gates of Bina is the Baal Shem Tov. And our particular Moshe with our 50 gates of Bina is the Alter Rebbe. He gets out of jail in a few days. And his 50 gates of Bina is what was given to Moshe. But what was given to Moshe was only 49 gates. He didn't get the 50th gate till after he died. Opening the gate, that 50th gate, is the responsibility of us, the Hasidim. And this 50th gate is what Mashiach meant when he told the Baal Shem Tov that I will be revealed when the wellsprings of your wisdom have spread out to the whole world. Meaning that we, the Hasidim, are the 50th gate. And through that 50th gate, the wellsprings of godliness become revealed in the world. You guys have a niggun for us?
Yeah, do you want to do your joke song? Something about the mikvah and some marshals?
Okay, we can try it. Let's try it. You know, this program, the whole idea of this program is to bring Mashiach and to add Mashiach awareness in the world. And the Rebbe said that everybody should ask how long it's going to be until Mashiach comes, and we should all be thirsty. So this is my version of Ad Mosai, how long? If the mikvah was mashka,
The mikvah was mashka,
and I was a duck,
and I was a duck.
I swam to the bottom, and
No.
tell me how
How
long
long
do I have to wait? Can I get Mashiach now? Or
must I hesitate?
Well, the mikvah's not mashka,
Oh, mashka,
and I'm not a duck,
and I'm not a duck.
and I swam to the bottom.
Swimming up,
Tell me
how long
do I have to wait?
do I have to wait?
Can I get Mashiach now?
Must I hesitate?
Merciful King,
Oh, merciful King,
all the work is done.
all the work is done.
Don't you think it's time to have some fun? Tell me
How long
do I have to wait?
do I have to wait?
Can I get Mashiach now?
Or must I hesitate?
Hey, sir,
Hey, mister,
I ain't lying.
I ain't lying.
The people down here, they're sick and tired. Tell me
How long
do I have to wait?
oh,
Can I get Mashiach now?
must I hesitate?
Now come on,
on, children.
We're gonna have some fun.
Gonna have some fun.
You ain't seen nothing
Like the Holy One.
down there.
How long
Do I have to wait?
wait?
Can I get clear now?
Or must I hesitate?
You guys
Ad
have anything
matai.
you wanna do anything?
No, go ahead, keep going.
You don't.
My turn, my turn.
Just as a refresher, in the Hasidic service called Hisbonenus, which means contemplation into the workings of godliness, to get some feeling for the greatness of God. There are three aspects. There's more, but we're going to discuss three. One is called mimic, and one is called the depth of das, and the third one is called iyun. Now, the way that works, a person who is able to generate a new idea in godliness, a new chachma, the way that he's able to generate it is because, like a Rebbe, he has a realization of the infinite light. And because that light is so precious, he has a strong desire to unify it. And through concentrating on that desire, he is able to arouse his koach hamaskil, which is his power to generate new ideas, new chachma about that infinite light and how it's drawn into the world. And that level is called mimik. It's the level where the Rebbe starts. Once there is a chachma and bina in the brain, revealed in the brain, then he concentrates on that chachma and bina. He uses his das to connect the idea itself to the explanation in words and letters. And that's called the depth of das. Now, iyun, the third one, is the complete opposite. Iyun is how the student starts from down, as opposed to how the Rebbe starts from up. The student starts from down, and he climbs up through the explanation in words and letters that the Rebbe explained. And then the student is finally able to reach the level where the Rebbe starts. And the reason why the student is able to do that, because after all, he's just going through the dry details. That's what the end is, to go over the details over and over again until the point of the explanation is grasped. So how is it that the student is able to do that? Why would he do that? Like now, why would anybody be interested in mimik, amakas das, and iyun? But it's a fact that people want to get to the depth of godliness. And the way they do it is to start with the words and letters of the Rebbe's explanation. And the reason why it is, and the reality of doing iyun, is that iyun has a source that's higher than from where the Rebbe starts. The source is in a level called the inner point of the heart, which is higher than any level of revelation. It doesn't mean love and fear. Love and fear are the outer levels of the heart. This is called the inner point of the heart. What Eliyahu says is called Bina Libo. Bina is in the heart. And to explain how that works, how this level, the iyun of the student, has a source that's higher from where the Rebbe starts. Up till now, Reb Hillel's been explaining to us how it works in the levels, in the supernal levels, according to our learning how our psychology works. Now he flips over. He's going to explain it how it is by us, by explaining how it is in the upper man. upper man, meaning the man on the throne that the prophets see. And the explanation is like everything of Eon, you have to do all the details. You can't just jump to the point. Because jumping to the point, you can fool yourself that you really got someplace. You know, there's a famous story, the Midler Rebbe, he had a friend he used to learn with, and the friend became a businessman. And when he met up with the Midler Rebbe, the guy said to him, you know, I also have good intentions. I concentrate when I'm doubting. Why does it take you so long to doubt? And the Midler Rebbe told him, let me ask you a question. You're a businessman. Every year you go to the fair in Lipsy and you buy a whole bunch of stuff at a good price and you take it and then you sell it the whole year and you make money. And it takes a long time to get to Lipsy. Why do you take all that time? Just think to yourself that you got there. He said it's the same way with the davening. I'm also going through the stages to get where I'm going. I'm not just imagining that I'm there, and that's why it takes me a long time. So in this explanation, he explains that there are 4 levels of Chachma. How it is in a person and how it is in the upper worlds. And he starts with the lowest level of Chachma, which to us is the highest revelation there is. Meaning it's Chachma of the world of Atzilus, the Yud of the holy name Yud gave up. And in a person, it's called, and we've discussed this, how the idea flashes into the mind to become revealed. And the metaphor that was given for us is how a spring of water bubbles out of the ground. That bubbling out of the ground will be this first level of Chachma, the revelation of Chachma in the brain. But that spring water comes from underground rivers that are hidden in the ground. Levels of Chachma that are not revealed. So the revealed Chachma, as it flashes in the brain, in Kabbalah terms, is called Or Abba, the light of the cloud. And the underground rivers that feed that spring are called, in Kabbalah terms, the mazalos of Noser Chesed and Vinake. Meaning that there is a higher man than the man of Atzilus, which is a hidden level called the level of the crown, the level of Kesser. And there's also the symbolic representation of a man with a skull and a brain and a beard. But the beard of the man up there is not an actual physical beard, we understand. What it is a symbolic representation of how Hashem contracts his light so that it could be revealed to the world. Because it's too great to be revealed to the world, God is in. So those beard hairs are a symbolic representation like little tubes, very thin tubes, which carry down the juice of Chachmas, which is generated from the brain of the higher man, so that the Chachma of Atzilus, the first level of Chachma, is like the spring water that bubbles out of the ground, and the level of Chachma, what we call the light of the Father, gets its nurture like a little baby, sucks. He sucks from that beard hair. And Bina gets her inflow from the 13th beard hair, the 13th mazel called Benakir. And that is the second level of Chachma going up, called the Mazalos. The third level of Chachma going up is the actual hidden brain of that man of Kesser. which is the generator of the Chachma juice that comes down through the beard. And I'm going fast because we had this already a couple of times. One time Gilmore Ellis explained it to us. And there's a fourth level of Chachma called the Chachma of the essence of the skull. The skull of that level of the crown, the godly desire for the world of Atzilus, indicates the essential desire for the world of Atzilus. It's not a desire for Chachma of Atzilus. It's not a desire for Chesed of Atzilus. It's the general desire for the world of Atzilus. Like when I want a house, I have a general desire for a house, and I have particular desires for the different rooms and how they're set up. So the essential desire to have a world is symbolized by the skull of Kesser. And the way it's described is like when a neshama is told by Hashem to enliven a body. The neshama itself has no interest in enlivening a body. It just wants to stay with Hashem. After all, it's complete godliness there. What does it want to come down into a world? But once Hashem tells it to do it, so it develops its own desire to dress itself in the body. And this chachma, the essence of the skull, is the desire. It's a symbolic thing of the desire that the neshama has to dress itself into the koach hamas, into the thing that generates chachma. So that the person, when the neshama goes into a body of a person, is able to utilize chachma. Now, he told us these four levels of chachma to get the detail, because he wants to reach something that is higher than chachma, even higher than the chachma of the essence of the desire. What he wants to explain to us is a level called tainug, a level called pleasure. And in the level called pleasure, there is a godly pleasure to have a world. But the godly pleasure to have a world is called a pleasure which is combined. It's combined with a desire for something outside. Why do I want a pizza? Why do I have a desire for pizza? Because I enjoy pizza. The same to Hashem. Why does he have a desire for a world? Because he has enjoyment of having a world. Because through that world, he's going to be able to connect with us. We'll be able to give him nachas and fulfill his true pleasure principle. He'll be able to get nachas from what we do. Now, in the godly pleasure, there are two levels. The one I just described, which is the pleasure that is combined with a desire. And then there is a higher level called the simple pleasure. And the simple pleasure is not combined with a desire at all. For example, I have pleasure in being alive. And I don't need anything outside of myself. I have pleasure in being alive. There's nothing outside. So too by Hashem, there's a simple desire, which is the pleasure that Hashem has in his own essence. Well, the king has pleasure in his own essence, Shashui Amelech Ba'atzmusa. Can we do a nigga now, you guys?
Yeah.
And we reached the level. Hirsch is way up here.
Yeah.
I'm doing it like you said. I'm doing it without.
Yeah.
Second. All right, indeed.
So just to stop in the middle of where we are, this week coming after Shabbos is an amazing anniversary of the getting out of jail of the Alter Rebbe when he was arrested by the Tsarist government because they were told that the Rebbe was fomenting a revolution. And the Tsar was very paranoid because in those days you had the French Revolution and the American Revolution, kings were getting tumbled. And he was told that this guy was fomenting a revolution. He was teaching about the level of Markel, level of sovereignty, and he was taking on himself like exalted behavior. And he was locked up. The anniversary of his getting out is coming up next week. And it was a big miracle because it was explained to him that the reason why he was arrested, because there was a decree on him up above in heaven, because he was revealing secrets of the Torah that weren't ready to be revealed, like this kind of stuff that we're saying here. And when he was released from jail, that was the sign that the decree in heaven had been taken away, and he was now allowed to give over his teachings. One of the great and beautiful teachings of the Alter Rebbe, and it's not a thing that he went to teach, it's a thing that came out and then automatically and other people heard it. He told Hashem, I don't want your paradise. I don't want your Gan Eden. I don't want your world to come. I don't want Mashiach. I only want you. And the Alter Rebbe and the whole Hasidus, that's what it's accomplishing. It's connecting us with Hashem himself. We're in the middle of this and we'll go back to it, but I wanted to share with you a personal story that happened to me. And it's connected to this, to the Maimarim, to the teachings of the Rebbe, how we relate to them. I once read a book called Death in the Afternoon. I myself, I'm not a big fan of this writer who wrote this book, but he wasn't writing a novel. It wasn't a fiction book. He was a big aficionado of bullfights. And he wrote a book that described all the details of bullfights. How you bought the ticket and you tried to buy a ticket in the shady side because in the sunny side it would get too hot in the afternoon, and it was called Death in the Afternoon. And basically that grim story of how the bull was killed. And there was like a lot of liveliness and appreciation there, which he said he couldn't explain to somebody who hasn't experienced. And he told the stages of a bullfight. He said the first thing is they test the courage of the bull. So see, not a courageous bull, he could be very dangerous. A courageous bull comes in with his horns and attacks. The way they do it, they get a guy on a horse with a spear, and the bull comes after him, and he sticks the bull, and the bull with his horns lifts up the horse and knocks it to the ground, and that's the first part of the bullfight. The second part of the bullfight is when the guys come in with the capes and they dray the bull from side to side. And the third part is when the guy comes in with the two colored sticks with the points on the end. He jumps between the horns of the bull and he throws those sticks into the neck of the bull. And now the bull's neck is down. And the final stage is when the matador, the guy with the sword, with that red piece of cloth, comes in and he lures the bull as close as he can to him. The bull can come within 1/8 of an inch. And he brings it around, he takes the sword and sticks it through the shoulder of the bull into his heart. And the bull dies. So it's very compelling. And I read this thing. And afterwards I said, how can I use this? Well, I was ashamed. I took time and I wasted it reading this guy's book. And I said, how can I take this and use it to serve God? And then I realized this is an experience I have when I learned a mimer from the Rebbe. I said, in the beginning of the mimer, I'm a courageous bull. I'm going to come in, I'm going to understand what I'm being told here. And the first thing that happens, the Rebbe starts to ask questions. And the questions tell me, hey, maybe I'm not going to understand this thing so good. So those questions like the spear sticking the bull. Then the Rebbe drays my cup, like those guys with the capes, to get the bull going back and forth. And he builds a whole building. And he said, no, but it's not really like, it's really like this. And he brings me back. And then the Rebbe comes with those two colored sticks. He tells me some kind of thing I really don't understand, like about the Tzimtzum and the Reshimu and the Kav or a soap and how it works up there. And he sticks me, and now I'm not such a big courageous bull. Rebbe, I don't really understand anything that's going on. And then the Rebbe comes and he kills me. He takes away my idea of self. And he pulls the curtain aside and he shows me God. And to each one of our ability and each one of our experience, that is the compelling nature of how a Rebbe connects to one through a mimer. It's just not an intellectual exercise. Like we said here, the Rebbe writes himself. He writes his own essence. And anybody who has a chance to learn Chassidus, and Chassidus is synonymous with Mashiach, take the chance. It's worthwhile. Should we have some kind of a song? You guys have a song for us?
No.
I'm just we'll have no fear, Moshiach will be here. I don't care if you want to play that or
Take it away, Speak. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach. Don't want to wait. On this field.
go, you go.
I don't know the song.
But
We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. Wait, we want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. Sing it. Take it away. Come on, Dave.
turn yourself up.
Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. Want Mashiach. We don't want to wait. Have no fear. Israel, have no fear. Live this year. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. We want Mashiach now. We want. Yeah, we want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait.
In the days when the Rebbe used to sing that song in 770, Yossi Piamento used to be in 770, and he would be playing that wild guitar right there with the Rebbe there. They would be singing that song, and he would. Do you remember that? That was pretty amazing. Okay, so what we're explaining now is the simple pleasure, which the simple pleasure that Hashem gets in his own essence is the revelation of Hashem. It's not the essence of Hashem, but it is how his essence is revealed through the fact that he has pleasure in his essence. Just as a side thing, life has two beats to it, called in Hebrew a rasa and a shuv. Everything is running to be included in godliness, because that's the source of life. And when it gets too close, it gets scared and runs back. So there's this continuous, the love dove of the heart, how the blood gets depleted and goes back to its source to get more sugar and oxygen. The moving of the sun around, the moving of all the planets, and even more than that, the movements of the angels that run those planets, called the Mazalos. They all have this thing of Rasa V'Shuva back and the Middle Rebbe explains what the source of that Rasa V'Shuva, that movement in the world that is called the life of the world. He said the source is that thing of Hashem gets pleasure in his own essence. The word in Hebrew for pleasure is sha'ashueh. He explains that sha'ashueh has two shin ayins. So the two shin ayins are symbolic. He said it's like when you go into hot water. Two things happen simultaneously. One, you feel how good it feels, and two, you go, ah. And that, how it is in Hashem, of him getting pleasure in his own essence, those two things become the source of all the life of the world, all of the movement of the world back and forth. Like the angels say, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. That's the Rasa, that's going up to be included. And then they say, Baruch, Kavod, his glory should come from his place. That's the drawing down. And you see it in every aspect of anything that's on. Now, the simple pleasure of Hashem has two levels. Are you surprised? One level is the level that's not felt at all. So you can ask a question, how can you have a pleasure that's not felt? It's called the time of She'enu Morga. The definition of a pleasure is that you feel pleasure. So the previous Rebbe explains how that is. When a son and a father, for example, are together, they have a lot of pleasure from being together, but they don't feel it. It's like taken for granted. When do they feel it? when they get separated. Oh, that was so wonderful to be together. So it's called a pleasure that's not felt. And how it is in the spheres above, that's Keser and Chachma of Atik Yomin of the ancient of days. Then there's a level of Bina of Atik Yomin, which is a level where the pleasure is felt very much. That pleasure that's felt very much, Bina of Atik Yomin, generates attributes, which is kindness and hidingness, chesed and gebur. So the chesed and gebur of Atik Yomin is what becomes dressed into the desire. That is the combined pleasure. How pleasure combines with a desire is through the midos, through the attributes of pleasure, chesed and gebur. The attribute of the kindness of Atik Yomin is dressed in the skull of our Champin, what we described in the essence of the Rosham for the world of Atzilus, essence of the desire for the world of Atzilus. And the Gebur of Atik Yomin is dressed into the hidden brain of desire called the Mochel Sema of our Champin. And that is the real connector that can connect godliness to the world through that desire. And that level of Bina of Atik, which generates those emotion attributes, is what Eliyahu was talking about when he said Bina Liba. That is the inner point of the heart that is the source of Iyun. It's a simple tainug, it's a simple pleasure. And the person who does the iyun, by doing it, is connecting to that simple pleasure, which is higher than, it's called the simple pleasure. It's higher than being connected to anything outside of itself. And that's the source of iyun. Now, can you wail out a little bit, or can you?
Well.
Ashrenu.
Was that?
Ashrenu.
Yeah,
Ashrenu.
Yeah, how about that one? That sounds like.
that's
So
it.
that-
That's
You'll
how it's
sing with
always
him?
been.
I'll sing.
Okay.
Clean editor.
You don't want to turn it up a little?
I do.
Okay,
It's not working. I hear you.
it's not going on. Oh.
That's from 11. Start off. Ashrenu. Ashrenu, Ashrenu, ma tov chelkenu. Ashrenu, Ashrenu, ma tov chelkenu. Ashrenu, 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 ma tov chelkenu. Ashrenu, Ashrenu, ma tov chelkenu. Umanoim, umanoim goralenu. Uma yafa, yafa yerushatenu. Umanoim, umanoim goralenu. Uma yafa, yafa yerushatenu. Umanoim, umanoim goralenu. Uma yafa, yafa yerushatenu.
You say it's wrong. Come on, you're all right.
Umanoim
Start it from the
goralenu.
top, go all the way.
Uma yafa, yafa yerushatenu. Umanoim, umanoim goralenu. Hirsch, help us out here, man.
Okay, I guess we'll have our sign
Yeah,
off.
let's have the silence.
Ready for the sign
I
off
just-
song? You ready for the sign off song?
I mean, I hope you are.
Remember, kid, yeah, you can say.
Is it?